So would we have quorum with just me and Olga, or do we need Jim here?
We would need Jim, I think.
Jay's here.
Oh,
No,
okay,
there's
so we
three
don't
of
need
us.
the chair. All right.
I'm not technically on this subcommittee
Oh,
though.
that's right.
I'm just hanging out
Oh,
because I
that's
love housing.
right. That's right.
I
Yeah.
think
The agenda is really helpful now. It has who's voting and who's not voting. And it says myself, Olga, and Jim. So
There's
think-
Oh,
Jim.
there's Jim.
Hello.
hello. All right.
Hello.
I think we're ready to get started. We would have 2/3, right, of our voting members. So I think we would still be okay even with 2, right?
Oh, right.
We have to have at least half. It's half, right?
I do want to let everybody know that next month I'm going to be out of town. And so maybe if I hate to do it just because of me, but if we could change the date so we make quorum, or if there's a way to make quorum some other way.
Well, that's what I was saying. I think we're okay with just the 2. I think if
Got
we
it.
have 2.
As long
that's
as Jim
great.
and you were there, then next month.
But it would be good to know.
Yeah.
We do have to coordinate because it kind of matters a lot if one of us is gone.
Right. Right.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hi everybody. We're here on April 20th for the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. The time is 4:04 p.m. The Affordable Housing Subcommittee of the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now commenced. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you're leaving the meeting so that we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. So roll call, we have myself present, Shreya Jimenez, Jim Toffel is here,
Present.
Olga Flores,
Present.
Jason, okay, and then we have those are our voting members, and then for our non-voting, we have Jason Heisey. It's present. Marcos, do you wanna? Did you wait? I didn't see you. Did you raise your hand? Okay.
Here.
All right.
Hello, everybody.
Mark Clark. It's not here. And Betty Viegas? Nope.
I think she's starting to log on right now. I just texted her. She forgot about it. She's
Okay. I thought we had also, is Maggie Amato and Gigi, they're not also, I thought they were also,
Maggie
Non-voting.
is, but she's out of town right now.
okay,
And Gigi, I believe, are out of vacation right now.
okay, so should we add? I feel like this list is not everyone who's,
I know, it feels
Megan also, are you ex officio? I thought you were as well. Okay. So I'll make a note to add Maggie, Amato, and Megan. Okay. And did I get everyone in the room? We have,
Shay, I just logged on. This is Betty.
hi Betty, thank
Hi.
you. Can everyone else just kind of introduce yourselves who's on the call? Looks like we have CJ with Ward 3. Who else here is on here? Sally Schwen and Joe Adino and then of course our lovely city staff. Thank you everyone for being on the call.
You know, you design a project for me and then you leave me out. I'm very hurt.
Oh, I'm sorry, David. David is on the call. Also, sorry, David. Sorry. All right. Moving forward, I think we got everybody. Okay, so call to the audience. This is the time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting law, commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. Is there anyone who wishes? Okay, so Joe's got his hand up.
I do, thanks. I wanted to bring a couple things. One of them is, one of the things I really appreciate about the Housing Segregation Subcommittee is that we're really open about everybody bringing their own knowledge about what they're reading and learning to that group. And I hope that this group can operate in the same spirit. And in that spirit, one of the discussions we had last month was around making data-driven decisions. I quoted from the map dashboard, and there was a response that data isn't any good anymore. We have other data that's private, Moody's data about housing tightness. And the map dashboard data, as far as I know, hasn't really been disputed by anybody. City staff has been relying on it as recently as last month. I've heard it quoted. And if we're not going to do that, if that's in conflict with new data that we want to rely on, I'm curious about why that conflict exists. And I think there are three reasons. I'd love to hear it from city staff in the future meeting, but either A, that data was never good and the conclusions weren't good to begin with. B, if it's a tighter market, has there been an unprecedented population explosion in Tucson? I haven't heard about that, but is that what's happened? Or have we maybe lost housing units? Have some gotten torn down and I haven't heard about it? I don't know what the latest news is, but we want to, of course, go by the latest accurate, relevant data for making those decisions. And I'm coming to it with an open mind, so I want to know more about that. And kind of a segue, I'd also like to acknowledge the passing of one of the luminaries in his field, Dr. Peter Marcusa, who passed away on March 4th at the age of 93 years old. He was Professor Emeritus of Urban Planning at Columbia University. He had a JD from Yale, and he wrote this book, In Defense of Housing, a few years ago. It came out in 2016. So when he is 86 years old, published this with David Mann. And I'm especially interested in that because the subsequent discussion to the data was a question about, are you saying if we do things that make it easier for market rate developers, that things will trickle down to making projects more affordable for everybody? And the response was, well, I'm not drawing conclusions, but microeconomics. My grad school microeconomic textbook said that you increase supply prices. Well, I think the word used was equilibrate. And that's just microeconomic theory. I point you to the fact that doesn't really seem to be how housing markets work in the 21st century. You can go to pages 46 through 50 of this book. It's not accurate to our globalized, hyper-commodified, and financialized housing markets today. I know chat's shut down right now. Last month, I gave you a study of 33 Canadian metropolitan areas that tracked household increase, building increase, and price increase, and didn't find a correlation, even when you're overbuilding your household increase in stabilization of prices. Vancouver was kind of the outlier, but the prices rose 6 times as much as incomes, even though they outbuilt their household growth by 20% over a 15 and 16-year period. So this book, that study, I've also mentioned the International Journal of Urban and Rural Research, and I'm sorry, I'm finishing up here, I know I'm over time. The December edition had some pretty good articles, scholars from Canada, Elvin Wiley, Elliot Treader, UT Austin, looking at that market, that also kind of showed that that's not how the market forces are being responsive. They're not responding to the local pressures like that and local wage increases. So I hope that we're all open to that data instead of, maybe 30-year-old microeconomics textbook, and we can update ourselves and bring ourselves to the table to learn and update and be open-minded about all that stuff. If you need any of those resources, I'm happy to help. My email is joe@thejoe.org. If you want to email me, I can send you any of that stuff. Thank you very much for the time.
David?
Well, since I was the one that called the map data into question, I will be very explicit. The map data very specifically says it relies on 2019 American Community Survey estimates. The 2019 American Community Survey looked back 5 years. So, and it's not the fault of the map data. I use the American Community Survey all the time in my work, and it's the latest information available. But I don't think there's any demographer out there who would say it's up to date. I think everybody would agree that housing markets have changed substantially since COVID began. And if anybody has any doubt about that, then one should look at the HUD median income data that came out day before yesterday, which showed an 11% increase in AMI in Pima County. So my point is simply that to rely upon MAP as a signifier of current conditions is a mistake. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's bad data. I'm saying it's old data.
Thanks, David. Anne?
I think that as a FYI, we've recently been asked to update our poverty and urban stress website, which is essentially, we're calling it a data hub of key metrics. I sort of actually hate the poverty and urban stress title for the name of that website because it's so much more than poverty and urban stress. And so as a FYI, we do plan on bringing that to the commission to kind of go through it and hear what data sets are and aren't included on that website that we think will be really important. And as part of that, we can give an overview. I have studied this ad nauseum in terms of what housing data is and how reliable it is. And so happy to give my 2 cents. But I think that's something we're planning on bringing on to the full commission as it overlaps with many different of the subcommittees.
Yeah, I would just add also that I've done a lot of data analysis by hand back in the day before we had GIS, where you got this Excel file from HUD and it was like, then you try to chart it and, there, to be honest, if you've gone through that data, there's not very much. Like really, I think we're at a point in time where these issues are very complex and there's a lot of layers, and the data that we have is very, very broad. So I think it's difficult in any field, to draw decisive. I mean, you can kind of look at big, broad strokes and trends, But to get into the nitty gritty of things, you know, at a neighborhood level or at a block level is very, very difficult. You know, the data isn't even really that granular. So we're kind of looking at things in general in very broad strokes, you know. So I think it's tough, you know, too. But I do think that the city has been, I feel, has been doing a really good job of trying to get us the latest data that they can, you know, in a timely fashion. So just want to thank everybody here who's been working on that. Does anyone else have any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next action items. So I have here homeownership goals of Haspan. Olga, I have you here as listed next.
I think that was just for
On the
for them
agenda?
to go kind of.
Is that for
I
a
thought
what?
it was for like. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I think I had just asked in the last meeting if we could kind of go over on the HAS plan. If the city can go over the HAS plan, home ownership part of it, like what's going to be done. So, because I keep asking questions, but I know there's a plan and I kind of just want to know what is in that, you know, the home ownership part of that, if you guys can do that in a nutshell, explain it. Is it not ready, Anne? I see the face, your face.
I was like, in terms
And that's
of,
okay, yeah.
yeah, I would say, and Sarah, feel free to jump in. You know, we have a couple projects in the works now for home ownership and supporting home ownership. We have our asset repositioning that we see as a real opportunity with home ownership as well. But we don't have any sort of secret plan that wasn't included in HAST and are still really developing pieces. We know we want that to be a piece of what the city supports, but are still trying to figure out what that looks like and are happy to take suggestions on that too.
Suggestions meaning, what do you mean by that? As far as
How can the city best support affordable home ownership? We know that we're one small piece of what a lot of people are working on. And so thinking through what that looks like, you know, excited about the new down payment assistance.
Yes.
Right. And so in terms of the limits there, but the plans are still evolving and being developed.
Got it. Okay. We can just put it on hold until there's more. And I will definitely do some more research with a couple of people here to kind of hopefully at least start the discussion.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Joe's hand up again.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask, and what do we have a time frame for maybe sometime we could come back and get an update on the details of that plan? I don't think we've talked about the asset repositioning stuff really in the CEHD at all, and I'd love to hear the details. I've heard a little bit from Liz Morales, but I'd love to kind of hear more details and be able to disseminate that info more often when we talk about.
Yeah, and I will say we're trying to hire a housing administrator that will oversee our PHA, and really hoping that person will lead the asset repositioning. That's what the person who was in that position before got it so far, and it hasn't gotten much further since she's been gone. So when that person gets hired and caught up to speed, I think that's where it would be a really good time to bring it to the commission.
You're not going to let Sarah do
that? Sarah's got enough other things she's working on.
I know.
Okay, the next, if there's no further discussion on that item, the next item on our agenda is the list that we developed at the last meeting. I went ahead and I consolidated that list. Should I share is that what I should go ahead and share that? Let me share my screen. Hold on, let me pull it up. All right, can you all see that?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Oops, this is the wrong one. This is the one. Here we go. All right, so I tried to kind of organize this a little bit better here based off of our last discussion. So there's kind of some broad categories. Obviously, zoning was kind of one of the bigger ones that came up a lot. You know, setback relief, density bonuses, parking. And I guess to go back to the conversation earlier for me, you know, you can get in the weeds about data and, you know, go on forever about all the details, but in terms of big strokes, I think what you were, I don't know, Joe, you tell me what you were trying to get at, but are you trying to suggest that just building more housing in and of itself isn't going to help? That's kind of your whole argument, right?
I don't think that's my whole argument. I think that when we've demonstrated the need for affordable housing units, and this is the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, and I hope that our suggestions are focused on increasing capital A affordable housing and housing affordability. And I know that when we talk about home ownership, we've talked about land trusts a little bit, but you know, I brought up co-ops last time, and the kind of response was, well, it's hard to get lending for co-ops. And you know, we're here to make recommendations to government about things we can do to make progress. So, you know, my thought is that, okay, yeah, that's a thing that's tough to do. Building affordable housing is tough to do. And getting funding for the land trust is tough to do. But, you know, I think our role here is to say, if those are things we value, then how do we make those work better? When we talk about asset repositioning, you know, my interpretation of that from what I've heard is there might be some RAD conversion involved, if people are familiar with that process. And but that might allow us to expand public housing too. So that's what's on my mind. And if we need more affordable housing, then, you know, there's only a couple ways to get it. It's you acquire it, you subsidize it, or you build it with likely with subsidies too. So I hope we're looking at all those approaches, but I hope we're also looking at the data that tells you that you know, being uncritical about development, just saying we'll build more everything, build more market rate, isn't something that's a helpful policy. I don't believe it is. I believe that evidence and what we hear from experts and scholars in the field are showing and telling us that.
Right, but you're in a room here with all affordable housing developers. I mean, there's not a single market rate one here. And so I think that's where there's maybe some misunderstanding, because, and all the suggestions that have been made are exactly that. So I just want to be clear that you're here in a room with people who've been doing this work for a long time, who've built lots of units. And these are their best suggestions, looking at what other cities are doing, what other communities are doing, and doing exactly what you're talking about, finding ways to cut costs and to really incentivize. I don't think any of us in this room have once suggested that these incentives be extended outside the boundaries of affordable housing. You know, so I think we're all on the same page. I just kind of wanted to make that clear. So as far as zoning, density bonuses, again, 20% more potentially, or whatever that number may be for affordable housing projects, parking waivers or reductions, expedited plan review that came up a lot, creating incentives for nonprofit / for-profit development partnerships, flexibility for design review. I wasn't sure that comment if they meant there aren't too many processes where we have design review. That's only really required for either the IID or historic review. And I agree that those processes can sometimes, many layers, many steps, can be very cumbersome if you're trying to do an affordable housing development project. I reinstating over-the-counter review, and with that kind of expanding DSD, revisiting the flexible lot development option. And then we had a bunch here in the bucket of kind of funding. So I saw there was 2 buckets when it came to money. One really had to do with finding sources, right? Creating positive cash flow, when it comes to affordable housing. And then the other bucket really came down to reducing costs, right? So almost, which is interesting, I've been reading some arguments from some people, from other people who are interested in economics and real estate development, and wondering if, I think that's part of kind of just a city's larger economic strategy, whether or not you front load taxes, right, for development and put that burden on development in the beginning versus putting it into operations in the form of taxes. So I think there's some pieces there economically, and I'm not sure how those layers may be or may or may not be those strategies in conflict, right? If you think about that cash flow. But we had some ideas about the general obligation bond, pursuing grants nationally, right? Endowments, foundations, there's a lot of money out there right now. The housing trust fund, we've, I think, talked numerous times about trying to find a dedicated city tax or developer fees to create a cash stream for that trust, which already exists, it's just not being utilized. Increasing subsidy or allowing higher rents will justify higher loans. We have loan products, Fannie, Freddie Mae. Again, I think most everyone has used some form of all of these, but and then lobbying for more money at the federal level from HUD. And then we had a bunch about, again, reducing your soft costs, city tax incentives. Could we reimburse or delay city taxes, as Marcos suggested at the last meeting? We, looking at construction sales tax, impact fees, the real estate tax exemptions from the county. I believe, Marcos, this is already something that's allowable, correct? I don't know if where Marcos is. Utility reductions, fee waivers. And then I think there's quite a few that we're looking at, comments that we're looking at, processes that may need to be changed within municipal jurisdictions, whether it's county, city, HCD, or other city departments, when it comes to project-based vouchers, surplus land, site acquisition, land banking, land donations, adaptive reuse of public buildings, and then specifically, looking at affordability terms and requirements from 30 years. These were both revising these statutes, these were both very specific items from Marcos. And then we also saw some about kind of the smaller scale or home ownership, working with small builders and single family home incentives. And then this buy down on houses. So I thought it was a pretty good list. There's a lot on here, even trying to consolidate it, still a lot. We had the comment about exploring housing co-ops and then developing a roadmap that articulates clear housing objectives. Okay, Jim.
So just kind of bringing this back to the goals. Our goal here is to create a set of recommendations that we feel are actionable. that's going to help incentivize affordable housing in Tucson. And I think the next step of this process is to try to narrow the list down. And there's a couple different ways we could do that. But, you know, what I was thinking, I guess I'd like to hear from everybody else. But what I was thinking is, you know, if each person went through this list and maybe identified the impact of implementing this. So would it have a high impact, a medium impact, or a low impact in terms of, you know, what it could do in terms of creation of new or maintaining existing stock of affordable housing. And then the second thing would be the ease or the cost of implementing that item. So, you know, and I really liked when we did the goal setting in the overall commission, how we had that online survey tool. And I don't know if that's available to us or not. If it's not, you know, we could try to do it the old fashioned way where we send this out and maybe have two columns, impact and then ease or cost of implementing. And then, you know, want to go for the low hanging fruit first, right? So let's pull out the things that we think are easy to do and are going to have a high impact. And those are the ones that we should probably try to address first. And we could try to narrow this list down to, if it's too big, nothing's going to happen, right? So, you know, maybe narrow it down to, these are what we think are the top 5 things we should do, and then the next 5 and the next 5 or something like that. And so, you know, so the question in my mind is, how do we get some sort of consensus in this group to go through that process?
I'll just jump in real quick and say that we do have the ability to create a poll like what you guys had done before. I saw that just yesterday. I have access to Microsoft Forms. I can create that, and I can try to work on that before our next meeting so that you guys can get it, and then we can have the results of the poll by the next meeting. And that will be, you know, a good way that at that point in time, we will have the priorities sort of established. And let me know if you guys discuss today a little bit further. I've got what Jim's said, the impact, high, medium, and low, and then the ease or cost, high, medium, low. And if you guys want to try to change that up, just let me know. Whatever you want to have done, I can set up a poll so that we can get your input and get a survey together so that you all can provide the input on that so that we can have a prioritization.
I was thinking on the ease of implementation, it could be difficult, medium, or easy. So the impact would be, you know, is it going to have a large impact or a small impact on the number of units? And then how difficult would it be to put something like this in place? So like putting a measure on the ballot, that's going to take a lot of work. That's going to be very difficult to do, but it also have a huge impact. You know, there are other things that it just needs a vote. That would be, I would say, you know, might be a lot easier, such as the parking waivers. So maybe that's a median impact with that's easy to do. And maybe those aren't exactly the right. I guess I'd like to just throw it out in here if anybody has other ideas on how we get consensus on this list, because it's a very long list. It's a very complete list. I think it's a great list. Some of it is, you know, we don't have control over. Some of it's county, some of it's state. So, you know, we want to try focusing primarily on the city items, I think. You know, and for what it's worth, you know, we had a Arizona Housing Alliance board meeting earlier today. So the few items that were on here regarding the state, you know, I was trying to plug those and see if that organization could maybe start lobbying on behalf of some of those items. But
Can I just add, this is Betty. I had my hand up, but I thought I'd jump in. I think that's a really good idea. I think that we should also, you know, I see these things maybe in some type of a graph or a spreadsheet probably is the easiest. And then we should put, is this single family? Is it multifamily? Is it home ownership? Is it rental? You know, because I think these things, some of them can be applied to both, and some of them are only applied to multifamily, or, you know, so you know what I mean? Just to get it straight in our minds, you know, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about multifamily? Are we talking about rental? Are we talking about home ownership? Are we talking about, I mean, some of it is self-explanatory, but not all of it, because there are overlaps.
Can't we like split things in different categories and then do maybe like a poll? Like housing, you know, like you just said, Betty, you know, the different categories you just announced. What if we narrow it down to these certain categories and then do a poll about what, you know, everybody's thinking? Just a suggestion.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like the next step in the process is once we have an idea of the 5 or the 10 or whatever we determine the number of items that we want to focus on, there's probably going to be some action items to flush those out. And what does that mean? And try to create a little bit more definition behind them. You know, I think the devil's in the details in this business. And so the more that we can do to say, this is what we think, you know, needs to happen, and this is what we think is going to be the benefit that, you know, I think the more impactful it'll be. So.
I guess for me, I was wondering, I like the idea of looking at the types of housing, but I was hoping that these strategies would be applicable to everyone, right? That they would be helpful to everyone, whether you're doing rental or home ownership, or, you know, I guess for me too, I was seeing them maybe if there was another column, long-term and short-term goals, because just because the general obligation one, for example, like you mentioned, Jim, is going to be a hard one, right? I think it's good to still maybe put it on a long-term goal list. You know, it's not something that's going to happen right away, but I think it's probably worth trying to shoot for. I mean, I don't know if that helps either.
Betty, did you have other thoughts or comments? Okay, so I guess I don't know if there's no more comments. I think, is everybody comfortable with the approach of we're gonna create a poll, and I don't know if we want to do it before the next meeting or we do it during the next meeting. Maybe we could just, if it's a live thing, we could do it during the next meeting and basically go through each one. Each person will vote on it. We'll tabulate the results, and we can start to fine tune it maybe the following meeting. Does that sound like a good plan?
I'm not going to be here the next meeting. Is there a way that we can arrange for me to get the poll before by chance? Great, thank you.
I think it would be a more efficient use of time if we could do it by, you know, a Google poll or one of those online things, rather than sit around and one at a time, or raise our hands, or do the chat function or whatever. I think if we had it in front of us and had some, had a way to weigh in, and then it could be tabulated by staff before the meeting, and then we could talk about the results at the meeting. I think that would be a lot more efficient.
Yeah, I can work on the poll and try to get that out to you guys by the end of next week. If I don't get it to you by the end of the next week, it'll be early the week after, I think. My goal is to, and if I might reach out to you, Jim, or you, Shay, or I might reach out to some of you to kind of make sure that I'm getting the the weights correct and kind of the goal of where we want it to go, but then I'll make sure I get that out to you guys. My goal is to have it out to you and returned back to us, maybe before the next meeting so that all the input is in there. Olga, you won't be here, but I'll make sure we get your comments included. And then, we could send you the results as well so that you can see that while you're out of town, but definitely want to have that so that at the next meeting, we can see where it all kind of falls into that assessment. And then I think at that next meeting, you guys could make those action items happen, and maybe even take some motions on a couple of them, because it's very clear that it's easy, it's, high priority, and then we can move forward on it potentially. So I will work my butt off to get a decent poll to you guys by the end of next week, so that you can also take it and include your input. And then if there's something that you don't see on the poll, or if we don't have it so that it's perfect, you'll always be able to reach out to me, and I can make sure I get that information included if it just didn't come across in the poll properly.
And do you think we're on the right track here?
That sounds good. Thanks, Sarah, for the poll.
I'll send out a Google.
Yeah, that all sounds good to me too. Is there anything else on this agenda item, or I'm like thinking maybe we can end early today? If there's no other comments, we have next on the agenda HCD updates.
So and Sarah, feel free to jump in here. I don't feel like we have a whole lot than was discussed a couple of weeks ago. As you all know, we were busy with the LIHTC application, thanks to many of you on this call. Corin, you may be able to give more of an update. I don't know what happened yesterday with the parking. I heard various things, so feel like that might be an update possibly worth sharing, but up to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So as some of you are aware, I think this committee voted to support the amendments previous meeting or before. There's an amendment before Mayor and Council to allow affordable housing to be eligible for the individual parking plan, which is a way to reduce your required parking. And that's kind of part of a suite of code amendments that all relate to commercial parking that are before Mayor and Council. And the bigger piece of that is actually around EV charging. So they did hold a hearing last night and got public testimony, and then continued the hearing. They left it open and asked for more stakeholder engagement over the next, 6 weeks or so. They're kind of looking for this to come back in, probably June, maybe later. So we're going to be doing more stakeholder outreach, especially related to EV parking, but also related to the other aspects of the code amendment, including affordable housing. So I think it's really helpful for them to hear that this is a priority for affordable housing developers, that there be some flexibility around parking, which I definitely hear from this group. So we will be holding another stakeholder meeting probably in mid-May, and I will definitely make this group aware so folks can attend if you're interested. And then, of course, when we actually have a date for the continued hearing, I'll let everyone know.
What was the overall, I didn't listen in, what was the overall temperature of the room?
So I would say, again, like this is sort of a suite of code changes related to parking, and most of the concerns are definitely not about affordable housing. In that aspect, I think that's kind of like almost like a no-brainer. I don't see any concerns about that aspect getting approved by Mayor and Council. It's really about the EV charging. And to be clear, currently affordable housing would fall under the requirement for EV charging as part of just multifamily. So that is definitely another aspect to think about. But that's really most of the concern is from the kind of commercial development community that this adds cost before our community really needs this infrastructure, because it does add some cost at the time of development, although much less cost than to go back and retrofit and add EV infrastructure later. So that's really the concern. It's just the cost and how that would affect development and how it could affect housing development in our community at a time that we really do need a lot of affordable housing. So that's why we're going to be doing another meeting to hear a little more and see if there's a way to balance some of these concerns.
Yeah, I'm curious, it has to be similar arguments as when it went through for residential, right? Because it already got approved for residential. And was it similar?
It's a little different what we're hearing around commercial, because with residential, it's kind of, it's minimal cost. We've heard, around $200 to do it at the time of construction versus $1,000 sometimes to retrofit later. It's a little different because, on commercial, this is really about adding chargers to large commercial parking lots. And so the types of chargers that would be used are a little different than what would be installed in residential, most likely, because it has to be a faster charger usually. So, there's some things where this may add, it just has a different cost implication, and the equation's a little different, I think, in the commercial side than single family residential.
Thanks, Corin.
And just one last thing, I messed up the agenda a little bit because I was trying to expand it and I kind of copied from the full commission. So it says that on the next agenda item, the next meeting is May 5th, but that's when the next full commission meeting is. So I'll make sure to clean that up for you guys so that we have a better agenda for the next time as well. Still getting my feet wet here at the city. I mean, I don't know how many months it's been, but they've flown by very fast, but I'm very excited to be here and lots going on. And I've had just lots of like teary-eyed moments working through a lot of really great things. So just sort of my quick update, and really excited about everything that's going on, but apologies for the mess up on this agenda, and I'll have a better one next time.
I thought it was already better. So thank you for getting more info on there. It's very helpful. I'm a little bit concerned about the ex officio, because I feel like we have gone through, but other than that, it was great. Thank you so much for that. I think that's it. I think we can adjourn early.
Looks
does
like
anyone have
Jay-
any?
Shay,
Okay.
looks like Jay has a question or comment.
Oh yes, sorry, I didn't see that, Jay.
No problem. Also, I'm really sorry. I'm usually not one to make meetings go on longer, but I just had a thought. So I know that Pima County has an affordable housing task force, and I'm just wondering how we are engaging with them. This is my first time on this particular subcommittee, and maybe it's not something for the subcommittee and something for the larger commission, but it just seems a little strange that we haven't had any contact with another group that seems to be trying to do the same work. So anyway, don't know if anybody's got info about that or thoughts.
I can jump
Marcos, yeah.
here. And well, first of all, Liz Morales is a member of our Affordable Housing Task Force. I think Betty Villegas is also a member. I work for the county. I've been attending, so I'm not really a member. I'm considered I guess an observer since I'm county staff. But the Affordable Housing Task Force is not a permanent body. They were startup, they were commissioned, I guess, for lack of a better word, to develop an initial set of proposals. One of those includes recommendations for the County Housing Commission moving forward. And so I think within the next couple of months, I think we're supposed to be finishing our work this month, and with the goal of having recommendations finalized in May. And then, I'm sure we can arrange to connect those recommendations, with Liz and her team being involved. The live meetings we've had have been held. I think the last 3 meetings, they've actually started live meetings, and they've all been at the city's complex, the city's meeting rooms over at their campus on off of Bonita. So I think there are some natural connections there, but thank you for bringing that up, Jay. And I think we'll all have to work to make sure we incorporate, those recommendations and make them available for this body. And then at some point, our housing commission will be, our supervisors will be making appointments. Once they receive recommendations, the empty seats on our commission will be filled, and our housing commission will start meeting again. And, we'll hopefully have a process set up to have some joint meetings as we had done in the past. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Marcos. I see a bunch of other hands up. I don't know who was first, CJ, Ernesto, or Jim.
CJ was first.
I thought I was first, but I wasn't sure. Thank y'all. I wasn't totally sure when I should ask a question. I started to speak up during the call to the audience, but this is my first time attending this meeting, and I'm just very grateful. I am not a housing expert, and it's nice to just be in a room with all these folks who've dedicated so much time to it. I am very interested in forwarding policy here in the ward office and with city council and the mayor. And one of the reasons I wanted to join was just to see if there was a space. I couldn't read the entire list. It looks like you guys have some amazing recommendations already. And I just asked Neto if he could share that with me, and I'd love to just go over it and try to understand more of it. In the ward office, so many people are aware of how dire things are with the housing crisis. And we get calls from constituents who say, I've got an idea. And, sometimes their ideas are not practicable at all. Like they say rent control, and I have to explain the preemptions of the state. And but sometimes they're good ideas. And I wanted to see if there was a space. And again, having not reviewed what looks like a very thorough list of recommendations yet, I wanted to see if there was a space to sort of share some of these things that come up and see. And again, I mentioned not being an expert, mostly to say I've read through the Landlord Tenant Act, but I know that there's things that are probably preempted at the state level that I'm not aware of. And so that some of these great ideas are maybe just non-starters because of state preemptions, but maybe there's a way around it. So anyway, I wanted to sort of ask about that and see if, again, like Jay, I'm not trying to make the meeting go longer than it needs to go, but wanted to ask about that and see if there's a space for that, or where the appropriate space for that might be.
Can I respond? CJ, we've had other people speak for other members of the public during the call to the audience. So that would be, I think, a great place for it. But even if you want to share now, I mean, would that be allowed? I'm not with Robert's rules. I'm still getting my way around Robert's rules. If it's not on the agenda, we're not allowed to talk about it technically, but I think if you brought it up during call to the audience, that would be the perfect time for it.
Okay, so maybe come to next meeting and do that. And is it better in this sort of subcommittee, or is it better during the larger meetings?
Were there items specifically about affordable housing?
Yeah, I think so.
Then yeah, I think this is the perfect meeting for that, to get in the weeds a little bit more on those items. Yeah.
Okay, and that's where I wasn't sure, having, the call to the audience that I'm familiar with it for the mayor and council meetings, there's no discussion of the thing. And so I guess it sounds like it's a similar process where I can mention it, and then if somebody wants to take it up and put it on the agenda for next time, sounds good.
It'd be great to have more members of the public at all of our meetings, subcommittee and otherwise. So I just jump in and say, tell people about these meetings and tell them to show up. It'd be great.
Sure. Yeah.
Hey, CJ, so if you have specific items that you want to add to the list, let's get it on the list. I don't want to wait just because, you know, there are no bad ideas, right? So, I mean, there's a few, but
I do,
you know what
I do
I'm saying.
constituent services. Let me assure you, there are some terrible ideas out there. And so, yeah, there's a couple in particular, and that I would love to mention if that's okay. And
Yeah.
and some of them are more vague, and it's more like, here's the bud of an idea, and maybe some folks who know a lot more could work with it. And then some are kind of very concrete. One of the concrete ones that I really liked, and it's on your list, Jim, of, you know, impact versus ease. I think it's on the I think it would be easy, but probably lower impact, was really about the, so my understanding is, you know, say like a rental agency can charge $50, say, for an application fee. And then even if in the current market, they might get, let's say, 30 applicants. And that even if they only show one applicant that apartment, and they do a background check or whatever for that one person, and then they rent to them, they're still allowed to sort of charge an application fee for people who are not even on a waiting list and who will never get to see the apartment. And one of the constituent suggestions was, could we limit sort of how many people an agency or a renting body can charge without doing anything. Like, you know, I understand that running a background check costs money, and so simply limiting how much pure profit these agencies can make off of the application fee process. So that's not exactly about increasing housing stock or retaining affordable housing stock, but it sort of seems like it's related to affordability in general. So, and then, yeah, if I understand right, so I'm just going to mention these, and it's not like we'll discuss them now. It's just they'll be on the list to be discussed later, right? Okay. And then, so the other one that is, I think, a little more general or sort of nebulous is, are there ways to, and I don't mean to outlaw or disallow, but to just disincentivize out-of-state investment companies from buying up the housing stock? Are there ways to make it a lot less advantageous or appealing to treat the housing stock that we have as an investment opportunity for folks living on the coasts and all over, outside of the state? And that, again, that one's very, very broad, but that's something that's come up a lot. I'll admit only to y'all that I was born in California. That's not my fault. People do have a true hatred of Californians when it comes to the housing crisis right now, and I get it. But not talking about people who get priced out of their homes in LA and move here, but just talking about these firms that will never set foot in Tucson, but that own lots of housing that they just then put in the hands of a property manager and just reap the benefits. So those are the two big ones. I feel like I will have more in the future if this is a good forum for that, but those are the two off the top of my head.
Thank you, CJ. I noted those, and actually that one has come up a lot. Yeah, it has come up in our meeting before, and I think it would be great to put that on the agenda for next time and maybe have a deeper dive on that one topic, because I'd love to hear from other people in the room about how we could legally do anything like that. But I would love to have that on the next agenda, next time, because I agree. I think it's a common enemy. I think it could be a common enemy that a lot of people could get behind. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, something like that, even if it were to go assuming it's legal, assuming it's consistent with state law and federal law, I feel like even if that did need to go to a ballot measure, that's something that I would run that campaign. I'd be happy to run that campaign. So, and I think it would win. So, yeah, would love to have those.
I think on that same list, I would add, which I didn't see on our list, but the Airbnb question, I wasn't sure where to put it, but that's another, I mean, I think these ones are really hard because I think they'll get shot down immediately in any form in the state legislature, but the Airbnb is another one that I thought, if we could address it in any way at the state level, I feel like it's a real problem for small like smaller cities like us, and especially like I think it's devastating in towns like Bisbee and towns that are super rural and very touristy, and they just don't have the wages, and like everything's increased so much because of that type of housing. So I think there's a few that I would love to talk more in depth about, those kind of ones where we're, again, I just think we're going to come up against a bunch of hurdles at the state legislature level, but maybe there's ways, I don't know how we could address those things locally. Go ahead, David.
Unless I'm very much mistaken, the state has already forbade local cities from interfering with the Airbnb and the like. So that horse is out of the barn, I believe.
So I did hear that is correct. And there's seemingly a little bit of movement on the state level, recognizing in particular places like Sedona, Flagstaff, it's been a real impact. So maybe some wiggle room through lobbying, maybe.
Neto?
Thank you, Shay. A couple of reminders, commission members. Tomorrow you have a get together at Westbound in the Mercado at 4 o'clock, and enjoy yourselves. You will be in a quorum, so no business talking. And also Friday, 12 noon, virtual town hall on fair housing. Featuring the Mayor Romero, Director Morales, and Commission Member Jay Young. You all should have received from me the Zoom link. If not, it's in the chat. Please take your lunch break, get your vegan burrito, and attend. And also, please share it on your social media and your networks. Friday's virtual town hall. Gracias, Shay.
Joe?
That get together tomorrow, is that scheduled for 4 or 4:30? I thought I had it down as 4:30. Just I want to make sure everybody has the right time. Nobody's sitting all alone at Westbound for it.
Oh, that would be difficult, wouldn't it?
It would be just the worst, the roughest, no doubt.
You're right, Joe. It's 4:30.
Thank you.
I'm just the eager beaver who wants to be there at 4 o'clock.
If you're up there early and you're already wondering, Ken, I don't think anybody will fault you, especially if you have to deal with all of us.
Oh, no.
Sorry, I think we're at the adjournment. Sorry, I was trying to send this off to Sarah, this revised list. So thank you so much, CJ. I think those were great. And I think we should definitely put them on the agenda for next time and go more in depth. If there's no other comments, can I call for adjournment?
I second.
Well, we'll see you all next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Shay.
Thank you.